science progresses one funeral at a time. A quote that I was hesitant to become fond of. Planck's principle says that science won't change with old scientists keeping their outdated beliefs that have been proven wrong. Instead, science advances as new generations come in and they learn more. If one were to randomly pick 10 blacks and 10 whites and try to employ them in the same kinds of things, the whites would consistently perform better than the blacks. A quote from William Shockley, renowned creator of the transistor and Silicon Valley. Pretty stupid, right?
I wanted to include that Playboy thing just because I thought it was really stupid. Because, who goes on Playboy and is, racist?
There have been many times this semester where I feel as if I'm unprepared for class. I felt physically and mentally unprepared to have the conversations we had. Looking back over it, I had a pretty rough semester. I had some awful stuff happen to me, and I had some great stuff happen to me. And I survived. I was able to talk about these topics, and I was able to keep my cool most of the time. But some of our research did lead me to some feelings of hopelessness.
I didn't write the signing petitions one, but I definitely feel that way. There's a lot of stuff, specifically last year, that my parents didn't let me go out and protest like I wanted. And I would sign petitions, I'd be on change.org all day. And signing petitions sometimes I feel didn't work because sometimes they didn't. And I felt like I was doing all of this for nothing. Yeah, so I definitely felt with that one.
I feel like I don't do enough a lot of the time. This class has given me so much insight into social change that I can use in my future. This is one of those classes that I think will stick with me forever. And I do not shut up about stuff that happens in this class. And to prove this statement, here is an interview I did of my mom, asking her just a few questions about my experience. Honors Science of Race at North Carolina School of Science and Math, and I started recording. So if you want to... Do you like me taking this class?
I absolutely like you taking this class.
Why is that?
I think for you to get more comfortable with having online learning, even though you've done a lot of that this year, but it was still people that you knew or you could have physical access to. So I think taking the online portion of it with people that are further away that you've never met was a good thing for learning how to talk to people that you don't have that personal connection with, immediately. And then the topic, I think, was extremely important for you because you've always had a heart for marginal groups or fringe groups. So I think learning about all the different racial aspects that go into our social studies was really important for you.
What has been stuff that I have definitely talked about with you out of all of the 500 things that I've talked about?
Out of the 500 things that you've talked about for this class, I think the ones that stand out the most were how people of color are represented in different entertainment venues. I know you've talked about Star Wars a lot and how so often the people of color in whatever movie it is are represented as the bad guy or the drug runners. And I know that has stuck with me, and you and I have talked about that. How when I first went to Russia and the people that I came in contact with there, especially Larissa that I lived with, had expressed that how most black people, American black people in movies are seen as the bad guys, the criminals or whatever. So that's just what they think of for black people. And I think when one of the other essays I think that you had to write, or maybe it was just one of the readings that you did, and it talked about how the scientists, and depending on the time in which they wrote and how they got people to believe in them. And I know you and I have talked about it, how just because something is written in a certain time, ideas do change over time. But I think that was interesting for you to read the history of some of the racist things in science.
And do you think that from the stuff that I've talked about to you, what do you think you're going to take with you?
I don't know if I'll take it with me or if I want to look more into it. And I know, like that last piece that I just said about how you look at the historical events. So in my teachings, in teaching civics, I want students to try to recognize things happen at a particular time, and we need to look at what happened all around those and how all the other current events that were affecting something. So I think I will kind of take that idea, maybe not this specifically about race and science, or the science of race rather, but just as we learn things, to try to learn the time in which it was written. But I do know that because you brought it to my attention, I know that when I see entertainment things, I will be looking more at people of color to see how they're represented.
Would you be interested in taking a class like this or recommending a class like this?
I would absolutely love taking this class and reading the things from it. Maybe not that great big book you had, but I would like to read more of the material you had. I think it's an important topic, and I wish our students in our regular high schools had the opportunity to study from it. But I think there's just such an opposition where we live to some of those topics, and I think it would be very difficult to teach to everybody. I think it's a wonderful class, and people should, but I think there's such bias against some of those topics that I'm afraid some students would go in it already fighting and not wanting to learn.
And any words to my teachers or classmates?
I don't know your classmates. I know you talk about them sometimes, and that's kind of weird to be a classroom teacher and to not physically have those students that I can go check on. I shouldn't say weird, but it's just been different. And I do thank your professors who stayed with you and talked with you, and when you struggled a little bit, backed up and helped you out tremendously in getting you back on the right path. So I do appreciate that, professors. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's it?
Yeah, I guess.
That's all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And here's a shorter, less usable interview with my little brother.
All right. State your name.
My name is Tate Tucker.
What is your affiliation with me?
I'm your brother.
Okay. Good enough. Did you like that I took this class?
It has been insightful.
Got it? That's a whole question answer. Has it been insightful to me or to you?
To me, since you share your information, and it's good to learn more about what happens.
How it works. The Google Meet or the I talk a lot about what happens in this class, like at dinner.
Yeah.
What lessons have you learned from this class, if any?
I've learned how people will use statistics to justify racism, leading to the name The Science of Race. Is it? Okay, tell me a lesson that you've said at the dinner table. You really haven't said much at the dinner table.
Yes, I have.
What have you talked about at the dinner table?
I've talked about lots of things. I've talked about how it relates to Falcon and Winter Soldier. You like Falcon and Winter Soldier.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. I've talked about
how does it relate to Falcon Winter Soldier?
the corruption of science. Of how
Okay, fair enough. That black super soldier.
Yes, Isaiah, and the corruption of science and how corrupt the super soldier serum can be, how people can use it for bad instead of good, and how that sometimes connects with race. And every time we watch an X-Men movie, we were watching X-Men 3 the other night, and I was like, this is a metaphor for racism. Do you remember that?
Which this is an editor's note. It totally is. It's about eugenics, and to sum it up, the movie is there's this kid who's a mutant, but his power is taking away other mutants' powers, and it's totally about eugenics. And I tried to explain that to them, but he wasn't listening, and he wasn't having any of it. But basically, it is about eugenics, about how they want to get rid of being a mutant. So yeah, I wanted to prove my point.
Yeah, and you remember my response to you? Everything is a metaphor for racism.
Okay, Dr. Lathan, this is what I have to live with.
Is Star Wars.
Yes, Tate, I've told you at Barnes & Noble when I see that they're justifying Poe's backstory. Okay, backstory for this one. Poe Dameron is the first Hispanic lead in any Star Wars film. And he had a normal backstory before they wrote in the very last minute, very last movie. They took his story and they just threw it completely out. Because his parents were both in the original rebellion. Both of his parents were in the original rebellion, like the original trilogy. And then they just threw it out the last minute and they made him a Spice Runner. And that's not the first time that Disney has done that with their non-white leads. They did that in the Clone Wars, I believe. And when they had a backstory for him, I'm so sorry, but I had to prove myself right. I will not let my brother win on this one.
I know.
So what did you learn from this class?
Racism is bad.
Good job. Okay, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
So, in conclusion, this last semester has been pretty weird. I think it's been pretty weird for everyone. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. In fact, I think it was better to have this class under these circumstances right now. There are lots of moments where I could have easily given up, but I didn't. I pushed through and continued on. From learning about the bad, Arthur Jensen, J. Philip Rushton, to studying the better, reading Angela Davis. There were a lot of moments where learning about this stuff sucked, just because of how brutal and wrong people can be. And learning some of this stuff was really awesome to see that I can still have hope in humanity, that maybe not everyone is awful. So, I've loved this class. I've loved having discussions with everyone in this class. And I'm gonna miss everyone so much. So, thank you for having this class. Thank you for being such great people to work with. And thank you for all the resources you use too. So just thank you.